write your mission for 2026, write your vision, and then I want you to write the that you're not gonna do. We're not gonna complain, not gonna do this, we're not gonna make excuses. This is the takeoff year. I've never felt better. I've never had a bigger momentum, but there's plenty of times where I felt unmotivated, useless, just paralyzed. Don't even know where to start. When we go into 2026, my 2 words for the year was welcome to Beyond the Label podcast. My name is Jacob Spellis, and I'm thrilled. We're starting off the new year, new location, new guests, new ideas, new just overall vision for the podcast and how we could help more people, inspire, and just bring hope. You know, a lot of times, you know, at my day job and stuff, I'm always training to be a voice for the voiceless, you know, so as we get into 2026, you know, no better way to start, you know, how to dominate this year. You know, a lot of times we're, you know, rah, ready to go. You already know the gym memberships are flying out the door. And then in 2 weeks, we forgot. And I think the main reason I see is sometimes we lose focus of discipline versus motivation, right? And, you know, even, you know, the last 90 days or so, I've been working, putting together, I have like a 65-page strategic plan for the year for the company. You know, I was able to make vision boards, my kids, wife, you know, business, personal, spirituality, just fun stuff, mapping out the trips, you know, and sometimes it's exhausting, you know, to constantly be on a schedule and stuff like that. But this is the takeoff year. You know, I feel like 2026, I've never felt better. I've never had a bigger momentum, you know, hitting records all the time. I feel good, you know, I feel good. So, but before we get there, there's plenty of times where I felt unmotivated, useless, just paralyzed, you know, just don't even know where to start, you know? And a lot of times we think about that label where we think other people have life easier, right? We kind of get in a victim mentality, or they had a better way to go, you know? Like I remember one time, you know, side story, I gave a person a connection to get a job, just an interview and stuff like that. And they like lied, like, you know, they tried to not tell their criminal record and their personal story, but not knowing that I know this person, you know, went to federal prison and started his own company and did this, you know. So, you know, he was trying to present a different person than he was to the person who could actually help him. And I say that because a lot of times we're not true to ourselves and who we are, and that's why we can't accomplish our goals. So when you think about, you know, going after the goal, right? We'll take the gym membership, for example, right? A lot of people just wanted to look better because they ate too much stuff from Thanksgiving to Christmas, right? But they didn't have no motivation, vision, and they couldn't see themselves. Like, why would you really want to get healthier? I just want to look good. You know, what's look good, right? Is it 100 pounds, 200 pounds, 300 pounds? We don't know, you know? So when you dive deep into that, you know, that's motivation. Yeah, I just want to get any better. But the discipline comes when you go to the gym every day when you don't want to, right? And that's more important. You know, how many people we go to high school with that were athletes, supposed to go to college, supposed to dominate, they had everything, but they played around. You know, they played around, didn't go to practice, got too much involved in the partying, got too much there. But, you know, I was talking to my sons the other day, you know, they didn't comprehend everything, but, you know, like, I want to be an athlete, you know, so I'm like, all right, you need the discipline, you need to work out. Like, this is your full-time job. Like athletes, you know, when I think of like, you know, Kobe Bryant, you know, he was known for his discipline. You know, he would practice before practice and then practice after practice, you know. You wouldn't catch him maybe in the bars or the parties, whereas other people was, you know, they would just label him like a freak of nature, you know, the way that he went after his goals. So same thing is like, how do we dominate 2026? Procrastination isn't even a word. You're just not motivated, you know? you don't have a dream big enough, because I tell you this, if I had, you tell me a procrastination, I can't go nowhere. I can't do this, I just wait to the last second. I don't think that's true, because if I told you I had $1 million if you worked out every single day, you would probably kind of do it. So what is that reward that you need in your life to make you not lazy, to make you not an underachiever, Think about that. How many people, you think about community leaders, when Martin Luther King Jr. gave the I Had a Dream speech. I think last year I had the great opportunity to stay in the hotel where he wrote that speech. Like literally have it was a hotel where every single president has ever stayed, right? And I felt the empowerment. Then I went to the place where the speech was given. I remember standing on it and I could just feel it in my soul. He didn't just wing it and think, one day like, man, maybe they'll have some dream. No, he gave you his vision in front of hundreds of thousands of people and how to deliver it, But when we go into 2026, to me and how I train my company and just myself and my family, my 2 words for the year was elevation and transparency. Everybody in my company is going to become a better employee, a better professional, a better clinician, a better family, better individual. That's why I chose that word. And then transparency, the whole team seeing where we're going. We're telling you how we're doing in every department. We're setting the goals. We're having crucial conversations to see where we need to go, because it's just that time, We're not getting caught up in the gossip. We're not getting caught up in the toxic culture. It's always got to go, company, team, me, as we move forward. So how do we dominate 2026? Don't get too caught up, because we're almost already halfway through January, maybe later, You got to forecast where you want to be and take, I would say, small disciplines. So I would even, sometimes I even like to take gigantic goals and try to do them in a month, and my teammates might hate that and stuff like that. But the reason I kind of do that is because, if I take all the goals I had for a year and try to complete them in a quarter, but I only get halfway through, it's still better than those goals I just had for the quarter, if that makes sense. So same thing with us. Going back to the gym thing, what's going to work greater for you? The idea of thinking how cool you'll look in a bikini or a swimsuit, right? Or actually going to the gym every day and doing just a little bit of work, because everybody's done it. Like, you don't want to go to the gym. You show up. You're like, this is stupid. I'm tired. I don't even need this no more. I don't even care. If you eat better, you'll live 3 years long. I don't even need those 3 years. We get into that mindset, right? So showing up every single day is half the battle, and there's times I've went to the gym and barely did shit, walked out and still felt like at least I came, at least I came, right? So these are the micro habits we have to create, and just saying yes. And that builds up and stuff like that. Like, the only way to probably get $1 million in your checking account is by you actually depositing $1 million. I know there'd be some smart asses and they'll say something or, whatever. But the only way is everything you earn, right? So hard work always beats talent. Originally we talked about, that athlete that never made it, but there's kids that had way more discipline from freshman year, that didn't cheat during the summers, that studied, that worked way harder than you in the preseason and the season, so they were ready for that championship, right? So going in 2026, we're going to overcome these labels. It's just imagination. You're not lazy. You're just not goal-oriented, right? You're just not focused, writing down what you do. And a lot of times when we're having a rough day, we get discombobulated because we have so many things that we do nothing, that we get paralyzed, right? You guys meet them. You always have this friend that has the greatest business ideas, who has, so much stuff going on, and then they don't do nothing, right? So even if you have all this stuff going on, just writing down 3 things Like I'm super disorganized, but I have docs all over the place where I'm like, checklist. Just get these these things, because then you start feeling the momentum to go. So it's all about discipline. I think about just employees that we have in general. Like, you have some people that just low perform. I have some people that do great, just show up and do their job, which they're paid for. And I have some people that are high achieving performers, and it all comes with discipline, the habits, because I like to think to, even in my field, like, I'll outwork every single person I have, all the time. A lot of times, they're calling us late night, like, Jake, you don't get it. You don't get it. I got to work all the way late, but they don't even get that they're calling me working too. And I got to solve shit after that, so it's all about your discipline, and where you're going. I think a lot of times, we just get too caught up, on the image of being successful rather than putting the actual work in. Because sometimes you come in second place, sometimes you come in last, and you worked your butt off. But there's other people that are outworking you, outsmarting you, out planning, So a lot of this year in 2026, I am strategically planning this year, next year, and then how to get the first behavioral health hospital. I'm really focused, like, getting down to the T, saving money here, cutting all extra fat, I guess, out of my life that's not serving me a greater purpose, overcoming hate, overcoming a lot of things, because, the new levels, a lot of times we're not ready for the new devil, that's going to come with you and come after you and try to take you down, like, it's kind of like, one thing I always think is funny, like, two people, they get too caught up on, like, haters, like, a lot of times I'll see people, hear about people talking shit about me, and I think, like, man, that's really sad, because I don't put any input into their lives at all, like, I feel bad for them that it's got to take space in their head, that they've been working so hard trying to piss me off, but I'm just trying to make the world a better place. Like, man, it's sad, they're haters. What you really got to be careful for is envy, right? So people that are envious, those are typically the people around you, a lot of times my most challenges came from me just doing my job. I would tell people I'm going to get to this next level. I would get to that next level, and then envy would come in, like, man, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't pay me this. And again, it goes back to the bank account. You put in, you get what you put in. So a lot of times, even when I started other companies and stuff, it's setting the expectation right at the beginning. So even when I'm doing new partnerships and stuff, I tell them stuff like, I need to talk to your family sometime. I need to talk to this, because I got to see if they're on board with their vision and everything that goes into it, So, I worked very hard this year envisioning, where I want to go, who I want to become, working on just better relationship with God, I think was very important. How do you learn more about yourself? I think about, like, praying. Like, a lot of times we'll have a 20-minute conversation with somebody we don't even know, but a lot of times we don't even have those relationships with God, telling him everything, and he knows, so, just trying to drive a greater force there. So again, sorry, getting a little off topic and stuff, but when you think about how to crush 2026 is really envision that person you want to be, right? If you're trying to become a better father, what's the discipline you're going to put in to give your kids more time? Because a lot of times when they're younger, we can hang out with them, we have all the time, but what do you do when you have 3-4 kids and you got to split up your time and you got to get real intentional? Like, for me, if it doesn't go on the calendar, it kind of doesn't happen. It's just out there, and I think a lot of times dreams and stuff are cool, but results are better, actually put in the work in, you want to start a new company, you want to do that, what are you studying? Like, if I take a look at your YouTube account and look at the history I'm sure there's a way to do that, right? What are your last 25, 50, 100 videos, right? If it's all on bullshit, trendy content, you're watching old grandma and grandpa doing a little dance here and there and people playing pranks, I'm not going to think you're that serious. But if you're trying to start a business and your last 50 videos are how to start an LLC, what's the difference of a corporation, how do you have a P&L, how do you make a pro forma, how do you raise capital, how do you do that? Now you're prepping your brain to go further, and I'm not saying like hustle's the answer, work 23 hours a day, sleep for 30 minutes, be strategic with your plan going into 2026, really envision that. So if I'm trying to become a better father, what is a good father? This might sound a little silly, but sometimes when I'm working with people in early recovery, a lot of things they're chasing, it's not even sobriety, it's love and connection. So I would tell them, hey, be careful, don't connect with this person, think about the person that you truly want to become in order for you to get that person, right? So, ones pick ones and tens pick tens, but you got to know what that good spouse is. So I would say something silly like, do you want somebody who just cheats on you on the weekend? They're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, what type of person? Like loyal, committed, peaceful, now you're attracting yourself to find that type of people, you're attracting the perfect partnerships that you're looking, right? So starting a new company, what are the customers you're trying to get yourself around, or the people or the circles you need to go into to the next level? Because a lot of times when you tell your dream and vision to other people, they might laugh at you, but I kind of like that stuff, going into 2026, I try to play it down. Like one time I had a new employee came in, and he was, after a week or two, he was like, damn it, Jake, I keep talking to all these people, and I just keep telling them this is a super, super small company. But now that I look at it, it's way bigger than I thought. And I said, I know that's the trick. You keep them on your toes, You tell them, no, I'm not doing shit. I'm not doing anything, because at any time you can be knocked down, your team and stuff, it's okay to tell where you're going. But the non-believers are always going to be non-believers, You ever talk to a person who doesn't believe in God and stuff like that? There's no convincing. There's no convincing in that moment. It takes a little word. It takes little seeds being planted. Same thing with your vision. You need people that are going to tell you, no, this is stupid. You can't do this. I always put together plans, and I bring it to the financial people and like, oh, Jake, you'll be bankrupt in like 30 days. And I'm like, oh, shit. Okay, I can't do that. But you need those people. But you also have to be crazy enough to tell them, hey, let me drive this company down to the ground. You just keep writing the Excel sheets, okay? But get people that are on the same mission. You got to constantly pitch the mission and vision to people around you. So they start molding and believing you and moving forward, So to me, killing 2026 is getting everybody around you on the same page of where you want to go, the destination, right? So it could be simple as fitness. It could be as simple as maybe starting that company, maybe going back to college, taking that label of being unmotivated, procrastinator, lazy, underperformer, take that out of your vocab, period. You just don't know where the hell you're going, and I think so many kids and people are lost. I think about, people I see daily are people just getting off drugs and alcohol and maybe just threw away 20 years of their life. The opposite wouldn't be like just recovery. It'd be connection and prosperity, because you want to feel like you belong somewhere, So in 2026, the only reason why the top is lonely is because you didn't bring nobody with you, So a lot of times when we think about how we can empower other people's lives to get better, somehow my life gets better, you know? When you think about the problems you want to solve, you know, that puts you way there. You know, sometimes I think about, you know, maybe we're making hamburgers or we're making little sandwiches and stuff. You know, what problem are we solving? Just a little lunch, you know? But, I look at people like Elon Musk, they're trying to figure out how the hell to get to Mars. You know, my problems became really small. And you guys always been there where, you know, somebody's telling their problems. And you're like, yeah, I wish I was there. I remember meeting with a business owner a long time ago, and he was like, yeah, that's it. My payroll's like $100,000. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even, that's terrible. He's like, no, it's just there. And then I got to $100,000 payrolls and stuff. And I remember thinking like, dang, now I knew what he was talking about. You know, he's like, I just want an easy job, you know? So, you know, going into this year, own it. Start now. You know, it's way easier to plan now and then also plan 2027 than plan 2028 and start going. You know, I'm not a big fan of plan Bs and stuff. I just make my plan A more secure, you know, unless you don't like the vision, unless it's literally failed or something, you know. Actually, you should never have that mindset, you know. How many people we see that they were just about to file bankruptcy, you know, like I seen Apple. I was reading an article and they lost $180 million or something, and they even fired like their CEO and stuff like that. And, you know, imagine if they just wrapped it up, you know, you wouldn't even be able to watch this podcast right now. Every single person probably has an iPhone, and now they do $1 billion a day. So in that moment, they felt like failure, but I bet you they had a business plan to come back, to maybe raise capital, to do this. Great minds got together, you know, and their mission and something like change mankind with technology, something like that. You know, it sounds simple, but did they do it? You know, they did it. So think about right now, I want you to, if you're watching or anything like that, I want you to pull out just a piece of paper, or notes on your phone, a Word doc or something like that, and write your mission, you know, for 2026. Write your vision for 2026. And then I want you to write the shit that you're not going to do. Because so many times we talk about the stuff we're going to do. We're going to write the shit we're not going to do. We're not going to complain. We're not going to do this. We're not going to make excuses why we can't go to the gym. And sometimes I think that's a lot easier to then move forward, you know? So just a little trick, you know? Every nonprofit in America has to have the mission and vision, but a lot of times we don't have it for ourselves, you know? And we invest in so many other things, you know? We invest in so many other things that are useless, you know? I see the shit coming to my house from Amazon. I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, or the toys I buy for the kids and they snap before you even get home, you know? We make those investments. They're not even investments, but we call them investments, you know? We invest in that, but how many people are reading books? You know, how many people are taking a course, reading, looking into YouTube, just doing whatever it takes to figure it the hell out? You know, what problems are you actually solving in 2026 will determine your outcome this year, you know? Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you so much. I'm so excited for 2026. I can't wait to meet at the end of December and show all the stuff we're doing. You know, I'm trying to elevate my team, be transparent this year, working on my family. I even, you know, won't air today. Even today, I got a kids huddle. They think they're in trouble, but we're just having a family meeting going over our code and values that we stand for our family, you know, trying to cut down technology, trying to improve family time and stuff like that. You know, that's just some of my stuff I'm trying to work. You know, I'm building Spellis Enterprises, which will create a flywheel of companies. You know, we're starting to get into real estate. We're starting to get into hopefully the technology space, the social media space, the education space. So I'm really excited. You know, I always think about it. It's crazy. I went from no GED to a GED to felonies to, you know, over 5-6 LLCs. You know, so you can truly do what you want in 2026, but no more motivation all discipline. Please subscribe to the podcast, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook, or you're just seeing clips and stuff. Help us out, and share the story to somebody you think would be a good guest that could share their story and really help a lot of people. Thank you.